Thank you so much, Anusheh, for coming on this podcast. Very excited to have you. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really well. How about yourself?
Good, thanks. So the topic that we're talking about today is around Shaadi and the conversations before Shaadi around with our counterparts around finances. So was that something that you were able to have a conversation with your husband before you got married?
It's interesting you said that, right? Like it's a conversation that we're meant to be having with our counterparts. And even though my husband and I, knew each other before, हमने पसंद से शादी कर रहे थे, but finances की बात उस तरह से कभी ना आई ना कुछ हुआ. In fact, शादी से पहले all of a sudden it was very strange because like I think both our families started pretending कि it's a very arranged शादी.
Yeah.
Okay, कुछ like nothing untoward to sort of look towards, and even big things that should be your own decision or right or you should be aware of. Like for example, एक चीज़ जो मुझे बहुत ज़्यादा थी कि जी मुझे right to divorce ना करना मामा. My dad just put his foot down. He got so angry and he's like, तुम शुरू ही ये चीज़ मनहूसियत से करना चाह रहे हो. And और हक मेहर की जहाँ तक बात है, was like families just आपस में hiddenly talking to each other and deciding all of that on their own. And I think we just didn't realize that this was kind of a conversation that needed to happen between us. And कुछ ऐसा भी लग रहा था जैसे everybody around us, our families did not want us to start talking about those things. So that's how it went.
Yeah, I think it was very similar in my experience as well. Even though like for me, it was always for both of us, it was very important कि हम अपने finances जो हैं खुद manage करेंगे, separately manage करेंगे, और जो भी खर्चा like घर की तरफ होगा, we will contribute towards it. But like to go into depth and actually understanding that was not ever like a conversation. I think large part of it also was कि नया प्यार है और नई like शादी के वक्त इस तरह की बातें नहीं करते. So one thing that you brought up, which is a very important part of the nikah nama, which is meher, which is also giving the ability to the woman to be able to be financially independent and be able to negotiate that some form and shape of independence, right? I know that mere time pe there was like a very awkward, uncomfortable conversation, and I've heard many other people say similar things. So what was your experience like that?
Yeah, no, 100%, like you're saying, like it was very uncomfortable. I didn't know what was going on, but there was like undertones of tension between both parties. And unfortunate, I think जो इर्द-गिर्द मेहर के conversation बन गए, उसमें unfortunate ये बात है कि part of it is just become like एक तो या तो वो status symbol के तौर पे use हो रहा होता है, या the other point is also like sometimes it's used as a form of control. बहुत dates जो हैं या assets के साथ कर देते हैं या future में उसको डाल देते हैं ताकि women will like in case of divorce for example you will get this, or like make it really sticky and hard to do all of those things. So in my case I didn't know how much meher I was getting. I think like it was the parents decided. They didn't even think that I needed to know or whatever. आपस में उनकी बात जो भी हुई नहीं हुई कैसे हुई मुझे कोई पता नहीं है. On the day of the nikah I was just handed an envelope and they were like, okay, तुम्हारी अमानत है, and so
did that not like question कि why is this such a hush thing, and like why am I not being part of the decision making process?
I think it definitely made me feel very uncomfortable, right? And you know me, and so like as an independent woman or being worldly, having managed money, finances before and all of that, I didn't expect that to be something that would happen to me or around me. Right? But it's just, I think the way the social construct works is you get bullied into then saying कि या तो मैं इसके बारे में एक ड्रामा खड़ा कर सकती हूँ या let this. I was like, please निकालनामा पे साइन करते हैं और शादी तो हो जाए. शादी हो जाए बाद में बाकी देखा जाएगा.
Yeah, I think it was very similar. It was a very very awkward conversation for us as well, and it was just like हाँ ठीक है निका नामा साइन कर लेते हैं, and then उसके बाद देखा जाएगा, और पैसों का तो कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं होती ना, obviously, like शादियों में. But going back to that Shaadi and like the finances and management of it, like how have you evolved, and what do you wish were the conversations that you had before you got married?
Oh God, this is getting spicy, huh? So I will say this. I think I've matured a lot in terms of how I manage finances. I think at that point in time when I was getting married, एक lifestyle aspirational का बहुत ज़्यादा था, and I didn't really realize कि like you know budget में देख के आगे चलते हैं. And it's like when I was getting married, for example, like मुझे लगता था कि अगर मेरा टॉप वीडियोग्राफर नहीं होगा शादी पे और डिज़ाइनर जोड़ा नहीं होगा तो मेरी ज़िंदगी
खराब हो जाएगी.
I have to date never gone back and looked at my शादी की तस्वीरें or videos, and I have not had the opportunity to wear that designer जोड़ा that मैंने मतलब रो दो के ले लिया था किसी तरह. So I think from going from that point and realizing what's really important, and I won't say कि it's unnecessary, right? I think हम जिस सोसाइटी में काइंड ऑफ अनफॉर्चुनेटली रहते हैं, लाइक शादी को एक इतना बड़ा माइलस्टोन, और वो है भी, पर एक इतनी बड़ी कल्मिनेशन ऑफ यू नो वुमेन्स लाइफ बना दिया जाता है कि आपने जितनी भी अपनी हसरतें पूरी करनी है ना वो इसी एक 3 दिन के फंक्शन और इवेंट्स में से करें, राइट? And then it becomes unmanageable in a lot of times, and a lot of times there's also expectation around society कि अब जी फंक्शन होना है तो वो पीसी में ही हो ताकि शोशा हो. But from there, and you know, like coming back to what you'd asked me in terms of how I've matured as a financial manager, और बहुत लगता था कि like पैसों के बारे में तो हम बिल्कुल भी कभी भी कोई मिसअंडरस्टैंडिंग नहीं हो सकता. मेरे पैसे उसके पैसे मेरे पैसे, everything's running really fine, right? You know what I mean? And going from that to realizing that actually in a marriage, one of the biggest strains that you can actually have between partners and when finances become a problem.
100%.
मोहब्बत सारी साइड पे हो जाती है और फाइनेंसेस जो है ना वो आपको एंग्जाइटी, लड़ाई, मूड खराब, रातों को नींद अजाब. So I think we've learned very nicely, and I've also realized that there need to be, as partners, some things that you do together, and some things that you do like separately, even with finances, and by marriage in general, but in finances as well. And we've learned कि एक pot जो है, जो हमारा income का combined है, उसमें से savings हम you know एक common goal पे करते हैं. Some expenses that are towards our living and rent and all those things, those we decide collectively, and then whatever is left of our incomes is in our own separate accounts that we do what we want with and get that financial independence.
And do you think that there is like do you guys hold each other accountable for the spending that you do from your personal money and personal accounts?
So we've had very bad fights about this once. कि separate finances हम manage कर रहे थे, and I was planning for some big expense, and I didn't have the entire money in my private account, right? And I was banking on the fact, just like assumed कि हाँ मुझे कुछ अंदाज़ा तो obviously था कि इब्राहिम के पास कितने पैसे होंगे, उसके account में क्या होंगे. So I was kind of like counting on that, and when we had a conversation, all of a sudden I found out that Ibrahim had lent out a substantial amount to a friend, and I wasn't aware of that. And it's not that the lending was a problem, it was just that it came into contradiction with something that I was planning for the both of us, right? And so when you say ki accountability, I won't want to say accountability, right? Like, because there are not unhealthy relationships out there as well, where money is used as a tool of control in abusive relationships, right? So I'll never say ki like you should hold each other accountable for the finances that you're meant to be managing separately. But what you do need to do definitely is have that communication beforehand. And that's what we've learned. Okay, communicate about the bigger expenses or where you're going with your finances. What are the goals? What are the kind of boundaries around that? What kind of conversations you need to have as partners, and what is okay for you to just do on your own.
That's very interesting, because for me initially it was कि I used to get very very defensive कि मुझसे क्यों question पूछा जा रहा है, like I am contributing, जो हमारा system हमने बनाया हुआ है कि हर महीने income में से X percentage यहाँ पर जाएगा और इसमें से घर के खर्चे निकलेंगे, but जो भी मैं खर्चा कर रही हूँ उसमें मुझे like I would get very very defensive. But then I started realizing also that the reason that I'm getting defensive is because we've not been able to have a conversation beforehand. What does it mean to have my money? And what does it mean to have his own money? And why these separate bank accounts and separate finances are also very important and healthy for a relationship.
But you know what I'll say to this also is, I feel like there is just this thought that when women spend privately, it's on frivolity.
Yeah.
Right? Like, वो necessity नहीं है, ये frivolous expenses हैं. Women are, bad money managers. They'll just... So the questions I do feel are sometimes a lot more कि मतलब भाई आपने इस पे क्यों खर्च कर दिया, उस पे क्यों कर दिया?
Because कितने का खर्चा करा?
कितने का खर्चा करा, और ये ज़रूरत तो नहीं थी. And I mean, like, $50 on a video game is fine. But कुछ और मैं कर लूँ तो मतलब that's a problem हो जाती, right? So that's also part of it, that even though, we have research, we have things that say that women run the budgets in the house, yet still...
And they're better managers.
They're better managers, absolutely. And they do it much, much more in a way that the community and the family is benefiting. Yet women's personal expenses are considered frivolous.
I also think there is this odd, subconscious control over finances, right? Because उसको लगता है कि आप because you are in that position that the society has provided you with, control होना या इस तरह से questions करना बहुत important है. And actually that annoys me quite a bit, because it's never a healthy conversation around it. And I think we're also not taught to have money conversations, which is funny, because it's such an important part of your relationship, and it's such an important part of your lifestyle. I remember जब शुरू में शादी हुई थी, घर के बड़े would advise me कि आप pocket money लें. So is that something that you have had? And the first time that I brought it out, I was like, listen, I think I should get pocket money. And he was like, why? What does that even mean? But is that something that you've encountered or gotten a pocket money?
So, and this has never been said to me specifically, but I've always felt like, I think at the time when I got married, I was definitely someone who, I was earning more than my partner.
Yeah.
I didn't need pocket money.
Yeah.
We would share expenses like that, but obviously, you have friends and groups where people talk about these things, and it's a pro and con kind of situation, right? कुछ औरतों को जिनकी नहीं financial independence है, that pocket money is really important.
Yeah,
that's the only 100%, kind of 100%. Saving they do, or any kind of sort of security net that they have. But I think वो बहुत एक traditional gender roles हैं शायद, या कुछ है, and pocket money is often used as a tool कि ये मेरी और ये या आदमी की बदौलत आपको कुछ मिल रहा है.
Absolutely. There's a bit of a condescending approach or tone to this whole pocket money.
Yeah. I mean, why are we never having that conversation? Okay, now you guys are married. You have, matlab, here's some advice on how to manage your money
finances
collectively. Yeah. But ये नहीं कि मतलब अच्छा हाँ जी pocket money दे दो.
Yeah.
And similarly, things like, agar shared expenses हैं, like you're living in a joint family, a lot of the times the conversation will be, had with the male partner in terms of कि अगर bills करने हैं कुछ.
Yeah.
Right, so it's a flip of both.
Absolutely, and I think that's very important to be able to contribute to the household as well, especially in this day and age where inflation is so high. So it goes both ways, right? If both partners are earning, then I think that responsibilities should be shared because एक इंसान के ऊपर pressure ना आए, and I think that is not how the structures of our society, of our families work in Pakistan, unfortunately, putting a pressure on one individual. I do want to ask, what is one advice or one thing you wished you knew before you got married around finances?
Oh, that's a really good one. So I think one of the things that I definitely wish that I had more of an understanding was it was कि आपको ठीक है मैनेज करना है जितनी चादर है उतने पाँव फैलाओ. All of that is great, right? But especially in this kind of economy and in the situation that we are in, nobody ever gives you advice on like how to actually grow your money. Like investment कैसे करनी है, collectively कैसे करनी है, diversify उसको किस तरह करना है, क्योंकि the only thing that we seem to be investing in is कि जी या तो हम plots ले लें, या फिर हम ज्वेलरी ले लें, और ज्वेलरी भी लाइक एज अ फॉर्म ऑफ ज्वेलरी तो यू नो इट लूजेस वैल्यू. ये भी कुछ लोगों को नहीं बताया जाता कि नहीं, जब आप गोल्ड में इन्वेस्ट कर रहे होते हो तो आप मे बी लाइक गो फॉर अ ब्रेक और अ बिस्किट, एंड बट नॉट ऑल ऑफ दैट इज समथिंग दैट्स एक्सेसिबल टू एवरीबॉडी. बट देयर आर अदर ways of doing it. Like मुझे म्यूचुअल फंड्स का कोई अंदाज़ा नहीं था, मुझे you know और इस किस्म की like stocks में कैसे करते हैं नहीं था, and it was just like oh it's complicated and all of that, and nobody ever told us, and शायद उनको भी नई information थी. The other thing that I think I would always want to say is, and I've seen you know this in somewhat like you know troubled and abusive relationships, right? Like number one kind of advice at least that I had come across and I wish कि किसी को भी ना मिले was like कि आप joint account खोलें और बस उसको use
Yep.
And उसकी usually ये बताई जाती है कि ये इसलिए क्योंकि you know खुदा ना खास्ता कुछ एक partner को हो जाए या कुछ हो जाए तो somebody has access to that money, and yes that's a big pro, but at the same time then it's like something that's used as a tool to keep tabs on you.
100%.
It can be
100%
controlled.
Agreed on that. I think that's something that I wish I had initially done. Keep it separate, and you can have a joint account where your joint expenses are coming out of. But I think जब आपने investment की बात करी, similarly इन्वेस्टमेंट में भी आपको मेक श्योर करना चाहिए कि जो भी इन्वेस्टमेंट कलेक्टिवली भी कर रहे हैं, आपका जो पार्ट है वो आपका पार्ट है. सो हैविंग व्हाटएवर कॉन्ट्रैक्ट्स, व्हाटएवर अग्रीमेंट्स दैट नीड्स टू हैपन, बिकॉज इट्स नॉट अबाउट कि ओ हमें, इट्स नॉट अबाउट कि देयर इज नो ट्रस्ट. I think it all boils down to the importance of having financial independence and financial freedom eventually. And these are the things that you would go on to teach your kids as well, if that's something that you would want from a family perspective, right?
Absolutely, like 100%. And I think while it's great to always think that things are going to be sunshine and rainbow and all of those things, life is complicated.
100%.
Things happen. And ये कोई एक ये सुपरस्टिशन है कि जस्ट बिकॉज मैं अपनी कोई इन्वेस्टमेंट कर रही हूँ या फॉर वो मेरे नाम के अंडर होगी, क्योंकि उसमें शायद यू नो जो भी हमारी म्यूचुअल डिसीजन हुआ है कि हम हाफ कर रहे हैं या प्रोपोर्शन ऑफ इनकम के हिसाब से कर रहे हैं, जिस तरह भी उसको हमने फिगर आउट करना है, या लाइक अ सर्टन डीड ऑफ अ कार दैट यू नो फॉर एग्जाम्पल like this is something that's happened with me recently. I leased a car from the bank and that's under my name. And I made sure that it was under my name. And it's not that I am distrustful or I'm not, I'm not planning for the longevity of my marriage or my relationship or there's something there. It's just that दूसरी गाड़ी जो हमारी है वो उसके नाम पे है, पर वो कभी किसी ने पूछा नहीं. So why can't it be मेरे नाम पे भी?
100%. I think these are really, really important and hard conversations that we need to have right at the start of the marriage, and then also keep on having and have that open communication. Thank you so much, Anusha, for this conversation. It was very, very insightful. I know that a lot of these conversations and a lot of topics that we touched upon are not easy to talk about, and they're unfortunately not even talked about as openly. So really appreciate you sharing your story. And if you guys liked this podcast, please comment and let us know if you want to hear more about this topic. Thank you so much.